A woman gets the email on a Tuesday afternoon. Her manager wants 5 minutes. She assumes it's bad news. It isn't. It's a raise, 8%. Real money. The kind that shows up in a new tax bracket. The kind she'd been asking for since her last review. She does what most people do. She checks her direct deposit the following month, sees the bigger number, and feels for a moment like she's finally getting ahead. 12 months later, her rent has gone up. Her grocery bill has gone up. Her health insurance premium has gone up. And somehow her savings account has almost exactly the same balance it had before the raise. She didn't do anything wrong. She didn't blow the money on anything extravagant. The math simply worked against her, quietly, invisibly, in ways her pay stub never explained. So here's the real question. If her income went up, where did the money actually go? This isn't a story about one person's bad luck. It's happening to millions of working professionals at the same time, in almost the same way, and most of them can't explain why. They get a raise, they get a promotion. Their salary on paper looks like progress, but their bank account doesn't feel like progress. There's a gap between the number on the pay stub and the number that actually matters, the amount of life that number can buy. That gap has a name. Economists call it the difference between nominal income and real income. Nominal income is the number printed on the check. Real income is what that number is actually worth after everything working against it takes its cut. And once you understand what's quietly working against that number, the mystery disappears. The raise wasn't a lie, but it also wasn't the whole story. The first thing that happens to a raise before it ever reaches a wallet is taxation, and not in the way most people picture it. Here's the misconception. Many people believe that moving into a higher tax bracket means their entire income suddenly gets taxed at a higher rate. That's not how it works. In a marginal tax system, only the income earned above each threshold is taxed at the higher rate. The rest stays taxed the way it always was. But that misunderstanding causes a real behavioral effect. Some employees worried about losing money to a higher bracket actually turn down overtime or additional responsibilities near a bracket threshold, even though the math almost never works out in favor of that decision. The fear of the tax bracket does more damage than the tax bracket itself. The bigger, quieter tax effect is different. As income rises, other things tied to income rise with it. Withholding often increases. Certain tax credits phase out. Employer benefit contributions can shift, and in many cases, higher earners lose eligibility for programs that were quietly supplementing their budget. Things like subsidized health premiums or reduced cost benefits tied to income thresholds. Illustrative example. Someone earning $60,000 receives a $6,000 raise, bringing them to $66,000. After additional federal and state withholding and the phase-out of a modest tax credit they previously qualified for, their actual take-home increase might be closer to $3,800, not $6,000. That's before a single dollar has been spent on anything. The raise was real, but almost 40% of it was gone before it ever became spendable money. But taxes are only the first bite. Second one is far bigger and far less visible. Section 2, the silent inflation tax. While the raise was working its way through withholding tables and tax brackets, something else was happening in the background. Prices were moving too. Inflation doesn't send an invoice. It doesn't show up as a line item anywhere. It just quietly raises the price of everything a paycheck has to buy. Rent, groceries, insurance, gas, childcare, often faster than wages rise to meet it. This is the concept of real wage growth versus nominal wage growth. Nominal growth is the percentage increase printed on the offer letter. Real growth is what's left after subtracting the rate of inflation during that same period. Illustrative example. If someone's salary rises 4% in a year, and inflation during that same period runs at 3.5%, their real purchasing power raise isn't 4%. It's roughly half a percentage point, almost nothing. And if inflation runs hotter than the raise, real income actually falls, even while the number on the pay stub climbs. This is the part almost nobody explains clearly. For a large stretch of recent years, wage growth for many workers barely kept pace with, or actually lagged behind, the rising cost of the basics. People weren't imagining the squeeze. Their paychecks were growing in name only. And here's what makes it worse. Inflation doesn't hit every expense equally. It hits the biggest, least avoidable expenses hardest. Section 3. The expenses that grew faster than the paycheck. If wages were rising roughly in line with general inflation, this story would end differently. But 3 categories of spending have consistently outpaced average wage growth for many households. Housing, healthcare, and childcare. Housing is the biggest one. Rent and home prices in many metro areas have climbed faster than median wages for years, which means a bigger and bigger share of every paycheck goes to keeping a roof overhead before anything else gets touched. Healthcare works similarly. Even for people with employer-sponsored insurance, premiums, deductibles, and out-of-pocket costs have generally risen faster than paychecks, quietly consuming raises through payroll deductions that increase almost every year, sometimes with barely a mention. Childcare for anyone supporting a family can be one of the largest and fastest-growing expenses of all, in many cases rivaling a second mortgage payment. Illustrative example: a household spending 28% of its income on housing 5 years ago, with housing costs rising faster than their combined income, might now be spending 34% of a larger income on housing, meaning a bigger paycheck is producing a smaller percentage of freedom. The paycheck grew. The 3 biggest expenses in that person's life grew faster. That's not a spending problem. That's an economics problem. And it's largely invisible unless someone actually does the math. But here's where the story gets more uncomfortable, because not all of it is happening to people. Some of it is happening because of people and their own decisions. Section 4. The hidden economics, lifestyle creep. Most people don't realize that one of the most powerful forces working against a raise isn't external at all. It's internal. Psychologists and economists call it hedonic adaptation, the tendency for a new, higher standard of living to feel normal almost immediately, erasing the sense of progress that came with it. Here's how it actually plays out. A promotion often comes with more than money. It comes with a new professional identity, a new peer group, sometimes literally a new office or title. And with that new identity comes new expectations. A nicer car because colleagues seem to have one. A better wardrobe because the new role seems to call for it. A nicer apartment because the old one no longer matches the new self-image. None of these decisions look irrational in isolation. Each one seems small, sometimes even seems earned. But together they systematically absorb the raise before it can accumulate into anything. This is where the video's central twist lives. Most people assume the danger to their finances is an external one. Inflation, taxes, rising rent. But the single most controllable factor in whether a raise translates into real financial progress is what happens to spending in the months immediately following it. Illustrative example: a household that upgrades spending by roughly the same percentage as their raise, a common, well-documented pattern, effectively erases the raise's impact on their savings rate, even though their nominal lifestyle looks noticeably improved. The raise didn't fail the person. In a very real sense, the upgraded lifestyle spent it before it had a chance to compound. That single mechanism, spending rising in step with income, explains more of the I make more but feel the same experience than almost anything else in this video. But there's still a piece of context missing. How do you know if your raise actually helped or didn't? Section 5. The number that actually matters. Here's the number nobody puts on a pay stub. Real, after tax, after inflation, after fixed cost income. Call it disposable purchasing power. What's genuinely left over to save, invest, or spend freely, adjusted for what that money can actually buy today compared to a year ago. This is the number that determines whether a raise mattered. Not the percentage increase, not the new job title, not even the size of the number on the offer letter. Illustrative example: walking through a full raise. Starting salary, $70,000. Raise 7% or $4,900. New salary, $74,900. After additional withholding and phase out of a modest income-based benefit, roughly $3,000 in actual take-home increase. After that year's inflation eating into purchasing power on existing spending, effectively another $600, $900 in lost value. After typical lifestyle creep spending on the new normal that often accompanies a raise. Another significant chunk absorbed, commonly 40 to 60% of what remained, based on well-documented spending pattern research. What began as a $4,900 raise can realistically leave a household with somewhere between a few $100s and just over $1,000 a year in genuine, sustained increased purchasing power, a fraction of the number that made headlines at the dinner table. This is not a reason for cynicism, it's a reason for clarity. The raise wasn't fake, but almost none of it was automatically going to translate into financial breathing room, because breathing room was never the default outcome. It had to be deliberately protected. Section 6. Why this isn't hopeless. None of this means raises are pointless or that the system is rigged beyond repair. It means the mechanisms working against a raise are largely predictable, and predictable things can be planned around. Households that do turn a raise into real progress tend to do one identifiable thing differently. They decide, in advance, where the increase is going before the increased paycheck ever arrives. Automating a portion of a raise directly into savings or investments, before lifestyle spending has a chance to adjust upward, is one of the few interventions with strong, repeated support in personal finance research. It's a small mechanical trick, but it works precisely because it removes the decision from the moment when hedonic adaptation is strongest, right after the raise, when the new income still feels unclaimed and easy to redirect toward yesterday's version of normal spending. The businesses and financial products built around income growth. Mortgages sized to what you can now afford. Car loans stretched to match a new salary. Credit lines that expand with your credit profile are not designed to help preserve that gap. They are, in a very real economic sense, designed to close it as quickly as possible. Section 7. Risks, when the gap goes negative. For some households, the story goes further than a stalled raise. It goes into reverse. When lifestyle spending is financed with debt rather than the raise itself. A bigger car payment, a larger mortgage, revolving credit card balances. The household isn't just failing to capture the raise, it's spending future income it doesn't have yet, using today's higher salary as psychological justification. This is where the feel-poor sensation can turn into something more serious. Minimum payments rise. Interest compounds. A raise that should have created breathing room instead becomes the reason a bank was willing to extend more credit, turning short-term comfort into a longer-term obligation. Comparison culture accelerates this. Visibility into peers' homes, vacations, and purchases, amplified constantly through social media, quietly resets what normal spending looks like, often faster than actual wages are rising to support it. None of this is inevitable, but it is common, well-documented, and largely invisible until someone actually adds up the numbers. From the outside, a raise looks simple. More work, more responsibility, more money. But once you follow that money through withholding tables, inflation, rising fixed costs, and the quiet psychological pull toward a new normal, a more complicated picture appears, one where the paycheck can grow every year, while genuine financial breathing room barely moves at all. The raise wasn't a lie, and the system isn't rigged against any one person in particular. It's that a bigger number was never the same thing as more freedom. Freedom had to be captured deliberately, before taxes, inflation, and habit had the chance to absorb it first. The lesson isn't that raises don't matter. It's that the size of a raise was never the real measure of progress. What happens to it in the months afterward is. If you want to understand the money behind the numbers you see every day, subscribe to Money Mastery.